And as they came together, they formed a face. And they formed the face of Our Lady. And I remember the instant I realized, I said to myself, clearly, I said, wow, that's Our Lady's face. Very excited about that, you know. And when I recognized her face, I heard a woman's voice say, Paul, you don't have to be any more than who you are. Just be yourself.
Hi, welcome to Cajun Miracles. I have with me as my guest Paul Maclean. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Rick. I'm glad to be back.
And we're going to continue from the last episode. Paul has some other things he wants to say.
After that last episode ended, I really thought there were a few things that could be expanded on. I really felt strongly about that. And a couple things added in that I may have not said like I really wanted to. And so I do appreciate the opportunity to come back and kind of break it open a little bit more. I think one of the comments I made at the beginning of the first program was I mentioned the Blessed Mother, and there was an earlier time back in, as I can recall, it was in 72, that I had a tremendous experience with the Blessed Mother. It was at a Cursillo weekend that I just kind of found myself at one weekend. And it was
now, Cursillo.
I was going to.
Oh, you're going to explain what that is?
Yeah,
okay,
Cursillo is a gathering of Catholic men. It's really a weekend of relationships, and you get a lot of adoration and just a break, sharing, you know, and starts on a Thursday evening, as I recall, and goes all the way through till Sunday with a closing ceremony. And most dioceses have a Cursillo program.
Yeah, I've even been to one. You can only go. Everybody can only go to one once in their lifetime.
Right. And I found myself there. I really hadn't planned on going, but some friends of mine, some really good friends of mine, had really kind of prodded me into going. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go. And so I went. It was a hard thing to go to. First, it was in the middle of a harvest season, and I had to get away for that much time. Was very difficult. So it took me a couple of days, as most retreats do, you know, to get yourself into the place that you're at, because you bring with you so much of the outside world that it takes a couple of days to settle in. And it was beautiful. The guys, as I remember, maybe 30 guys there, and we were on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain, somewhere. I can't remember where now. I think it was like Cursillo number 16, and I think it was in the Diocese of New Orleans, because we hadn't farmed. The Diocese of Houma-Thibodeau hadn't been farmed yet. And so around Saturday, I started leaving the stuff from workplace behind and started looking around at what was really going on. And I found myself not really able to get into it like some of the guys were. And during the day Saturday, I'd have to say it was becoming more bothersome to me. I really wanted to, but there was something about my own personality that just didn't let me to be. I just couldn't engage like what was going on. It was all what the weekend was about. Just open yourself up, and I just had a difficult time doing that. And I remember struggling hard. Then late that night, going to bed at that night, we actually had cots there. And I remember I wasn't sleeping. I was thinking about that exact thing, how I really felt like I was not part of this thing. And I wished I could have been. I was pretty upset with all that. I didn't know how to do that. And I would have liked it, because I liked the guys. They were all good, and wish I could have participated more. And I wasn't asleep, I'm sure about that. But all of a sudden, while I had my eyes closed, I could hear, I saw like the night sky, full of. It looked like, well, it started out as stars, but it turned to, the stars began to look like jewels, different colors of jewels. And then they began to rotate counterclockwise very slowly and come together much like an eye of a hurricane would, tight in the middle. And as they came together, they formed a face. And they formed the face of Our Lady. And I remember the instant I realized, I said to myself clearly, I said, wow, that's Our Lady's face. Very excited about that, And when I recognized her face, I heard a woman's voice say, Paul, you don't have to be any more than who you are. Just be yourself. Rick, I can't begin to tell you it was just like the relief that came. It was like a mother telling me that, just be who you are. In other words, she was telling me, you don't have to be them. And it was so peace-giving. And then it felt like warm water just flowed through my body from my head to the feet, all the way to my feet. And wow, it was something.
Now, were you inside or outside when you?
I was in the room getting ready. Yeah, we were inside.
So you were seeing these stars.
It was like a dormitory room.
So you were seeing all this in the building.
Oh yeah.
You weren't looking at the night sky. Or
oh
nothing.
No.
Wow.
Oh no. I was in the building. It was a dormitory room. Back, we had another guy on the other side of the room. He was sleeping because I could hear him snoring. So I know.
And all the lights are pretty much out. Probably.
Oh yeah. I was just laying there struggling with this issue.
And these stars appeared in this room in the darkness.
That's right. With my eyes closed, I can remember it just taking that formation of that. Looked like the night sky, and then it turned jewelly, and then it began to rotate, and then that rotation tightened up into her face. And I just so you know, maybe some of the people that are watching the program, the image that comes the closest to the face I saw that night was Our Lady Perpetual Help. And so, I've seen many, many images of Our Lady and her face, and that really, and there's so much meaning behind that imagery, in that it's an icon really, and so much imagery in it. But that's the image that closely relates to the face I saw. Well, needless to say, next morning, Sunday morning, I was like, wow, because all that pressure had been removed from me. And so the next morning, I met all the guys, and we had breakfast. And the thing that was different is I could just be me, see? Which I think was a lesson. Just be you. There are things that only you can do, that you've been given to get done, that nobody else really has been made to do. And so that was a tremendous feeling. I talked about it. So I was able to tell people about it, and so we left when it closed later that Sunday. And oftentimes after you have an experience like that, you just can't quit talking about it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Sometimes to a point where people just don't want to be around you anymore. Because you just you're so full of what you just experienced. You
can't hold it in.
You just got to share it. And I'm sure I went through some of that. And the feeling was like a euphoria in the sense that nothing really mattered. I mean, if that's heaven, I remember thinking, if that's heaven, who wouldn't want to be there? That feeling. If that's what you feel when you get in heaven. I never said that I thought I saw heaven. All I'm saying is that if that's the feeling, wow. If that's what you're experiencing. So that lasted for, I would say, probably 2 months. Just amazing. And then a couple things happened. And I think here's another lesson. First off, once you hear enough comments like, or you just imagine that or something like that. After you hear that maybe dozens of times, your mind begins to kind of wonder, did I really just imagine that? That seems ridiculous after experiencing that glory, but it does. The world begins to, and people very close to you begin to say, you need to calm yourself down, you're going to be chastised by everybody, and every kind of conceivable thing you hear, and then that combined with people saying stuff like, you just imagine that, man. That's not real. So you begin to wonder how real it really was. Sounds ridiculous after that experience, after feeling like that, but you do. The world draws, and then there's a part of a contiue. It's called an ultrea. And what this is you meet with the other people that have been on contiues. They usually have a men's contiue and a women's contiue. So the men meet with the men, the women meet with the women. And so you meet with them. Some meet once a week, some meet once a month. It just depends on that particular ultrea. And I began to use reasons, mostly work, goes back to what I said, mostly work-oriented, reasons to not attend ever so often. Then ever so often would turn into quite often, and quite often would turn to I quit. And that's another lesson. I think you'll agree, Rick, Father Dwayne taught us this, is that, you need to stay connected. You need to stay connected with other men who can support you, and they've experienced the same thing. And when you begin to allow yourself to get separated from anyone who has had a similar experience, the world begins to suck it out of you. And that's what happened to me. As my attendance to those ultreas got less and less, I went back to myself as I was before, working and replacing, and they used to tell me, come on, Paul, you need to make an ultrea, and I wouldn't go. And big mistake. And that's how I got into that on my part one of this talk. That's how I kind of got into the mode of getting full-time workaholic, and just because then I began to carry.
So hold on a second. So you're telling me that this with the Blessed Mother happened before?
This was about 1972.
Well, so this happened before
20 years.
Before The Voice?
20 years.
Before The Voice?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
20 years. And so what really happened was I slipped back into the mode that I was in. And, the scripture, I worked 7 times harder. I went back. Now that I had that experience, I worked 7 times harder because I was trying to also carry with me the guilt. And this is something that just don't happen to me, but the guilt of leaving and not following up on an experience so great. You carry that it's a shame or a guilt that you sense, oh my God, look what I did.
Yeah, she blessed you with her appearance, with that voice, with that peace, with that joy, and then for 20 years you basically turned your back.
Right. Absolutely.
Wow.
And turned, like I said, work into my God. And so, and deep down inside, that didn't seem, it probably worried me more than I know, but I didn't stop because of that worry, and probably pushed even harder because I was carrying that load of the worry, and so that's the mode I was in when my first part one that I explained in part one, that whole thing. That's the kind of frame of mind I was in, and I didn't really understand at the time how broken that was, but it was, and I think, and so going back to part one again, I think if I had to really think about, what kind of went down there on why did that happen? Why did I have that compunction, that experience that I explained that was so horrible. It's because I think, I was running out of time. I was running out of time in the situations in my life where they were really coming to a point where if I didn't change, maybe some things would have rang that couldn't have been unrung. And so I believe that even though I kind of turned away from her in 72, I think just much like that conversation between her and her son at Cana, what concern is it of mine? I think she influenced him to revisit me or visit me. He had never visited me, but I think she convinced him to visit me.
Not to give up.
No, I think it was I think it was probably one of my last shots that I would have had to turn around and do something different. I think, and he couldn't refuse his mother. And this time he visited me as I described in part 1. And I think what was done there really was, I was experienced what it's like when God pulls himself away. He pulls himself, and that's basically what I experienced, that being lost and hopelessly lost and in despair. He made his point because he pulled himself away. So that goes to show you that all that glory can slip away. All that glory of 72. But I'm going to tell you, a game changer, a real game changer is when he pulls himself away. And he takes this kind of attitude, I would say. He says, okay, you don't want me around? You don't want me part of your life? Let me show you what that's going to end up in. How are you going to end up from that? That's kind of what went on. And the next thing I felt after, part 1 was that the words that I have to express what happened that day on March 1 of 92. The words that I have, my vocabulary, are absolutely inadequate on how bad it really is. So what I did find, I think I mentioned this in part 1, but I did find the verbiage from the Diary of St. Faustina, paragraph 741. St. Faustina, a little nun that lived in the 1930s, had like 3 years of education, but Jesus used her to write this fantastic diary whereby he lays out so much of his divine mercy. She became his little secretary of divine mercy. And this young nun wrote this diary, who could hardly write. And she's a saint now, St. Faustina Kowalski. Died in, I want to say, 1938 maybe. And October 1938. So what I would like, one of the paragraphs, I said 741, is when an angel took her to hell, and she saw hell. And when I read this, I went, oh my gosh, I don't have to really explain this anymore. Here is the verbiage from a saint. And I'd like, if you don't mind, I'd like to read a short,
Please.
It's not the whole paragraph, but I'd like to read the part that really, it gets right to the heart of what I experienced. And I'll tell you when as I read it, I'll stop and tell you where, up to the level I experienced. All right. Today, I was led by an angel to the chasms of hell. It is a place of great torture. How awesomely large and extensive it is. The kinds of tortures I saw. The first torture that constitutes hell is the loss of God. The second is perpetual remorse of conscience. And the third is that one's condition will never change. That is where I went. That's the third torture. That changed me forever. That was hideous in itself. Now, many, many years after that, I would ask the Lord in adoration, was that hell? And he would say, no, not quite. And I would say, well, over time, I would say, well, why wasn't I able to experience more? And because he came back and said in prayer to me, because it would have killed you. Your body would not have been able to take it. Now that fits because of what I explained in part one, the way I was weak and in sweat, and I thought I was going to faint. Yes, my heart was about ready to come through my chest. So what he's saying there, what he said there to me over the years after experiencing it was, any more further down, and your body couldn't have handled it. So let's see what that is. Let's go further down. The fourth is the fire that will penetrate the soul without destroying it. A terrible suffering, since it is a purely spiritual fire lit by God's anger. The fifth torture is continual darkness and terrible suffocating smell. And despite the darkness, the devils and the souls of the damned see each other and all the evil, both of others and their own. The sixth torture is the constant company of Satan. The seventh torture is horrible despair, hatred of God, vile words, curses, and blasphemies. These are the tortures suffered by all the damned together. But that is not the end of the sufferings. There are special tortures destined for particular souls. These are the torments of the senses. Each soul undergoes terrible and indescribable sufferings related to the manner in which it has sinned. There are caverns and pits of torture where one form of agony differs from another. I would have died at the very sight of these tortures. You see, as a confirmation, I would have died. She's saying that. I would have died at the very sight of these tortures if the omnipotence of God had not supported me. Let the sinner know that he will be tortured throughout all eternity in those senses which he made use of to sin. I am writing this at the command of God so that no soul may find an excuse by saying there is no hell, or that nobody has ever been there, and so no one can say what it is like. Now, I'll stop there. There's more, which anybody would want to look. This paragraph, you don't have to get the book. You can actually, the book is fantastic, but you can actually pull this up off the internet. So many people search this, apparently, that they have actually put this paragraph, 741, that you can just search it and pull it up. So that's not Paul saying this. This is Saint Faustina saying this. But Paul can say that down to torture 3, that describes it perfectly. And I wanted to be able to clear that up a little, not clear it up necessarily, but this is so good. This is so accurate. And not only is it accurate to what I experienced, but it's accurate to what he told me in prayer afterwards, that you couldn't go any further down.
I'm glad you explained that, because I was wondering about that myself, about how if you were at this particular place, but it didn't seem like fire or burning or,
Yeah, I didn't go there.
You didn't go that far. He stopped you.
It would have killed
before.
Me. That's the part that would have killed
That
me.
makes a lot of sense.
So I didn't go there, and he saved me from that. If I'd have gone there, obviously, like she said, she would have died. See, she would have died if she wasn't protected.
So when he said, if you don't change, that's how you'll spend eternity. But that was just on the way down.
That's on the way down.
You didn't even get to where you were really going.
I didn't get to where what he was showing me is that if you continue to go like you're going, you think that's bad.
That was just the tip of the iceberg.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. And as you get down there, I remember one of the times I was praying about it, he says, but you'll be down there with people that hate me as much as you hated me. And Oh, that had this little paragraph right here. Really put it. I heard it on Catholic radio one day. They were talking about a paragraph where Saint Faustina was taken and shown hell. I said, I got to read that, and sure enough,
And that's for all eternity.
all eternity.
People don't realize how long eternity is.
Eternity. I mean, we have no fathom in our mind when we cross over that line. When we leave time, there's no coming back. We bring with us what we did and didn't do in time.
Somebody I had read years ago explained it like, they said, imagine a stainless steel ball bearing, maybe about an inch and a half in diameter. And imagine a little sparrow coming by once every 1,000 years and pecking at it. When you can finally see a dent in the stainless steel ball from the sparrow, that's just the first second of eternity. Right. That's how long it is.
That's right. And so we have a choice, and we decide that. That's our choice. And because she explains it so profoundly, the saint does. This little saint does. I mean, it really brings it to us. This is what we're choosing. This is what we are choosing. That's why the sacrament of reconciliation / confession, is so important.
And it's our choice. In other words, God sends no one to hell. We send ourselves.
And that's what he was showing me. You're sending yourself here.
Because it's like when you die, the way I see it is that the closer you get to the light, the more you see your defects and your faults.
Correct.
And so those with many faults go into the darkness, get as far away from the light as possible.
Right. And by shedding his blood like he did, he's given us, he's paid the price. But we have to come under his precious blood to be able to go from that time into eternity whereby we don't experience this. In other words, he's given us everything we need. The church has given us the sacraments, and he's given us through the church everything we need to enter that no time state, in a state of grace.
And we're talking about hell here. We're not talking about purgatory.
No,
we're talking about hell.
She also visits purgatory. That's another. No, this is hell.
That's hell. What you're talking about.
And there's no coming back from it. There's no getting relief from it.
Right.
Can you imagine?
Can you
imagine? I can imagine.
Oh, man, I can't. I don't think we can really imagine. It was told to me that purgatory is for the saved. Naturally, if you get there, you're one day going to get to heaven. But the pains of purgatory, and we're not even talking about hell, is that when you finally see God, the Creator, the love of your life, and you see He's real, and then you have to be separated from Him. That's the pains of purgatory,
right.
The pulling away, that burning separation.
So one more lesson I'd like to say out of this, because I believe that the Lord gives us everything, and He has us experience things, miracles, if you would. I mean, the miracles are always so wonderful, but there's a message behind all of them. We have to really seek the Lord. What's the message? What are our messages? He doesn't give them to us just so we can have good feelings from a miracle. He's trying to tell us something. Well,
there's nothing to play around with.
He's doing this. He's trying to get. He got my attention on this particular thing, but a couple things that come out here before I wrap it up, and that is that. God wasn't in, when this happened to me, when I had that, God was nowhere in my mind. Must have been in my heart, but I didn't realize it. There's something, and because Jesus did offer me this opportunity, I think, thanks to his mother's pleading for me. But God was not in my, I wasn't consciously thinking about God. So what happened there? So I think it was the prayers of many people. We live as we're a mystical body of Christ, and that includes the church. All the people have gone before us, and I can still see my grandmother, my aunt praying rosaries, and you wonder if all the efficacy of all the masses and the prayers and that it was beneficial, and had an impact to play on this experience. So we can't never give up praying for somebody. And I think this is a good example of why, if you've been praying for somebody, whether it be a child or a spouse, for years and years and years, and you see nothing going on, nothing happening, don't get discouraged. continue to pray, because this is a great example, and I know other people that have had these kinds of things happen. I mean, it just comes from nowhere. God can intervene in somebody's life for the reason he chooses. And so don't stop. Pray for that child or that spouse so there can be a conversion of heart. And this was a tough one for me, though I do think the whole world, if I understand, is going to experience this warning, which my little compunction, I got a feeling I'm going to experience it again, but maybe deeper. You know, the whole world will experience this. So I talk about that right now. So, in closing for me today, I just want to say, don't stop praying for that person you've been praying for. You know, just because you don't see anything happening, that doesn't mean that something isn't happening or that something will not happen. You know, it may. Can't give up. You pray in faith even for stuff you don't see. So Rick, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to come back and just kind of break open that part number one a little bit more. And I think as far as the conversion story, what the hell, I think I'm pretty much got all I got to say about that for the time being. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.